We are starting early here. We are starting early. And we hope we will have some people joining us shortly.
Yeah, we said we would be at 9, and we're just a little early. We're trying to get a jump on the day, but does anybody get a jump on the day, really, since time is just an agreed-upon illusion? Things to ponder. Monday, it's called Monday Pondering Day. That's what it's called today. Oh, I saw some hearts. So who is first? Things to ponder on Monday. Well, we're going to get there. Just talking about a lot of things that make you go, Oh, oneness. Hello. We are so grateful to see you. Hello. Hi, soul families. Hi, soul oneness. Great to see you here. Thanks for showing up and supporting us in our journey of trying to bring an understanding to this crazy world that we live in, because I want to understand it. I definitely want to understand. Sometimes if you understand something, it's not so painful, or it's not so, going against the grain. It's like once you can see something for what it is, it's like, well, that's nice. That's what that is. And I don't have to There's our Rosemary. I'm thankful that you decided to say hello. We need all the support we can get.
Absolutely. Again, we couldn't do it without you guys. Very happy to wake up with you as well. And Rosemary's off to bed. Oh, man. Yeah, we are doing better. It feels like we're moving into a totally different stage in life in more ways than one as we're pushing forward. There's Barbara. I see Barbara's in the house. Oh, I'm glad you just finished yesterday's video. Wonderful to have you guys here. This is one that it's been a few days working on and sharing. It's a really wild topic. And while we're going to show a couple different takes on the fact that our history is an agreed upon set of lies that does really have nothing to do with reality, perhaps, other than just simply an attempt to shape reality.
Well, that's what they do. They need us to understand their reality so that we go along with the program. Hi, Rasta Bear. And I'm sorry, person, I can't pronounce your name, but hello. I don't want anybody to feel left out. The doctor, happy day. Good morning. Good to see you guys here. Yeah, I mean, this is a world that has been created for us to fit for, we are pawns in their game. So really, to them, we're just little playing pieces. And it's important that we get along with their program because they need us to sustain it. So why does it have to be like that? Why does it have to be always us versus them? Why do they need that to maintain that control? Makes you think.
Hi, Elantra. Hi, Lee. Yeah, absolutely. So, this is a deep rabbit hole that not a heck of a lot of people have dived down, but there are some videos going down into this rabbit hole. Again, I think the thing for us to realize is that we've woken up to the fact that something's very wrong. Things do not add up if you go by what the system, what the history books, what we've been taught our entire lives. Kelly Norman in the house. Happy Monday. Grand Rising. It's not what we've been told. And there's a ton of evidence out there to point us into the direction of that true, very, very true little statement that history is written by the victors. History is written by the victors. It's just, fascinating. Yeah, Barbara says she doesn't want to play their games anymore. They cheat. They can't do anything but cheat. It's like that obsessive compulsive behavior. Oh gosh, Jim Carrey did a movie, Liar, Liar. You guys remember Liar, Liar? He couldn't tell the truth. Well, that is simply the reality with the system. They can't tell the truth. They just can't.
I know. It's like the backwards of it, right? Because he had to go one day without telling a lie, and that just about killed him. And these beings, they simply cannot tell the truth. But we're figuring it out. I think it's our journey to figure it out. Inspire me. Great to see you. Joe, hi. Good to see you. It's up to us to figure it out, because they're not going to help us. They're just not. No, they want us to go down the path that they create, the free education they give us. Everything, things of that nature. It's all to set us down a particular path that's going to be advantageous for them. But I want to walk my own path.
Yeah, again, we've been working on this series, Developing Superhuman Potential, because we've been told basically that everything in the world is our fault, and it's because we were born in the first place, according to certain belief systems. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The reality is humans don't even have an inkling of their potential. We have tremendous potential. Yes. And so, Cindy and I got the first video done, what's going to be a very, very, I hope to be well-rounded series of videos, basically showing how we do things energy work-wise. I thought this was appropriate. Max Velocity, he put down that there's mandatory evacuations for an entire town of Glenmar, Pennsylvania, due to major flooding risk from a creek rising 10 feet in 3 hours. Well, what was that in Texas? It was 33 feet and I forget how many hours, 10 hours. This is the norm now. Can we understand how mud flood, that whole concept of mud flood, comes about? I mean, here's what we have. We have so much evidence in the world that it seems there's so many people that will bring up one little part of it, but they won't put the whole thing together. They don't want to finish a line of thinking, because the conclusion is one that they can't handle. They can't handle it being the truth. And that's kind of understandable.
Well, yeah, they don't want that. That's something that's not going to help them. So when we understand what we're dealing with, beings that are very self-centered and they only know how to do things their way, you start to look at everything in your life and you wonder, am I falling for something again? Once you think you have it all figured out, that's usually the dangerous part. That's when you could have yourself in a box and not even know it. So always leaving room for yourself to be different. We did our first video today, teaching video of how we teach energy work. And it was really actually kind of hard for us to do, because we think everyone needs to be individual, but we both did go by a set of teachings that we ultimately kind of folded into how we do things, so that other people might have an idea of how to create their own way of doing healing work. So that was something very interesting that we did this morning. So we're excited about that. We're not sure how we're going to put it up yet, but it's going to be there for people who are serious and really want to do the energy work and that connect with us and resonate with us. We wanted that to be out there.
So we look to this, the fact that there's all sorts of floods going on all over the world in a just crazy, bizarre manner. It seems to be accelerating as time goes on. We see that we have cities built on top of cities, which may be built on top of cities, and they might be built on top of cities. Do you get the picture? It is getting pretty obvious. Then you have the thought of the Middle Ages. Why the Middle Ages are called the Dark Ages? Why were they called the Dark Ages? What were the Middle Ages all about? Seems blood and warfare would be a simple thing, but the reality is nothing's changed in this age. I mean, we still have as much war and as much bloodshed as we did back then. Well, you had pestilence, you had plague, you had famine. It wasn't really that nice. It started with a bunch of perhaps volcanic eruptions of gigantic sort. Well, we got all this going right now. I mean, again, where has anything changed? But how about, what really was the case when it comes to the Middle Ages? That's a term for Western Europe during the post-classical era. The AP World History's third time period, Middle Ages, began with the fall of Rome. Yeah, did it really fall? In 476, ended in the 1400s. Middle Ages are also called the Dark Ages, Okay, but what's really going on? Did the Middle Ages, are they the Dark Age because they never really happened and they're literally a fabrication, an invention to cover up what really did happen? Ooh, that's a big statement, isn't it? Why did we switch from the Julian calendar, which again is named after Julius Caesar, to the Gregorian calendar? Why did we switch 1582 from a calendar that had been operating for apparently, over 1500 years, and then we switched? We literally lost time. It's interesting because you literally did the switch on, the conclusion of the day on October 4th, 1582. And in the morning, it's going to be October 15th, 1582. What are they doing? Why would anybody change this? Well, that's a big question. And I see Diana's in the house and Jen's in the house. Yes, the Club of Rome, it just goes on and on and on. Dolores, good to see you. And D. Coppins, greetings down there in southwestern Florida. Well, the Roman calendar, 12 months, 355 days, added a month occasionally as needed. 46 BC, Caesar added 3 months to get the vernal equinox back to March. The Julian calendar had 365 and a quarter days. 1 day every 328 years, vernal equinox, March 11th, Easter moving later. Then Pope Gregory the 13th, 1582, switched everything, and we went to sleep on the 4th of October, woke up October 15th. Leap days in century years only if divisible by 400. Boy, it seems awful complicated, doesn't it? Can't we have a simpler system? But, there also were lunar calendars that were followed by certain people. And then we've also talked about the fact that there were different tribes of people that remember when the moon wasn't there, when it was actually put in place. And, can you think back to the Younger Dryas extinction event, which, again, somewhere around 13,000 years ago, apparently wiped out an awful lot of life on the planet. Could it be that that's actually what knocked the Earth into its 23.5 degree tilt, which is not always 23.5, it goes 21.5 to 23.5, and we're kind of wobbling. What the heck made us wobble? Well, again, I go back to that Younger Dryas period, and I go back to the putting of the moon in place, where it's one side always facing away from us, hiding what? And then its other side always looking at us. And of course, we have the terms lunatic, right? That person's a lunatic. Comes out of Luna, the moon. The moon affects us. It affects, the water on the planet. Our bodies are high percentage water, 65 to 85% water, depending on how old we are, how well hydrated. It's all part of something much bigger. And the changing of the calendars is hiding a fundamental flaw in our reality, to my mind.
Well, the moon is so very critical. It's an important part of our lives now. It's like we've really been integrated with the moon and the other planets. And, as a woman, I forgot how old I was when I realized that we are to be cycling with the moon, and even a little bit off is can be very difficult, but that moon actually works within us. So if we're connected like that with the moon and the planets and this planet, we got to be connected to the other planets in some bodily way as well. But the moon is our strongest player when it comes to working with our body.
And you think about, oh man, it's just, I mean, it's everything to me is just it's so obvious because everything comes together so flawlessly and seamlessly. When we think about the fact that life expectancy is dropping on planet Earth at a time when you would think that technology would bring about great leaps in life expectancy. And we actually have, again, fertility rates dropping. We have sperm counts dropping. We have had the introduction of all things from forever plastics that do literally get inside of men's testicles and cause issues, as well as playing with your estrogen levels and hormone levels in the body. We have all sorts of environmental toxins around us all the time. Again, we look back to the Sumerian history and tales, and there's times when those beings that ruled like gods said there's just too many humans to control. This is a problem. And so, the Great Flood. And again, these stories are echoed in cultures around the world. When you look to the changing, again, you can convert between Julian and Gregorian calendars. The whole concept of needing leap year, days that just got lost. Now, why would we have a religious authority, being in charge of setting the time in the world? Yet, when you look at it, the Catholic Church has exerted a ton of power. In fact, our whole numbering system, when we look at Anno Domini and BC, AD and BC, it's just so prevalent. But why? Why do we even use those as reference points? Why? Some calendars are much, much longer time frame. I found it fascinating that the Mayan calendar and the Hindu Vedic calendar started this age, the past age that we just completed. Now, the Mayan calendar, 2012 was when we stopped that age. And we have gotten that 2024 was actually, the stopping of the age. But you see what we're talking about. We're talking about days missing. We're talking about calendars being revised. How do we know 2012 was really 2012? Again, but I digress. The fact is that when you look to the beginning of the previous last age, the Mayans in Mesoamerica, and those people of the Indus Valley all the way on the other side of the world were in agreement for when the age started to within just a few years. Everything in our Western system is dominated by the Abrahamic system, which again, you have Judaism as the root to a degree, and then you have Christianity, and then you have Islam coming off of it. So when we talk about Anno Domini and before Christ BC being used, are we really saying, I've seen people bring this up, instead of BC being before Christ, are they really talking about before Caesar? Are they really talking about the empire itself? When we talk about year of dominion, right? Anno Domini, again, the root for so much of our words and verbiage in the Romance languages, the Latin languages, it's all coming from Latin. Are we really talking about a period in time in which the conquerors took over and started to completely run the system? They had vanquished the resistance, the rebels for the most part, and were imposing a new history and a new world system.
Well, yeah, Barbara says we are lost in time. I couldn't agree with that more. We are so lost in time. And these beings, they're the ones who need to set up this construct for us. So it's very important that they get everyone to get on board with them so that we drive their energy. But at this point, what do? We kind of have to go along with it if you're going to exist in this world and be somewhat comfortable. And for myself, I have things I need to do for myself medically. So it's not like I can just go off and be a gnome somewhere. But, so to a degree, reluctantly, yeah, I have to go along with it.
Yeah, when you look at how these things are written, Anno Domini Nostri Jesu Christi, or Jesu Christi. Again, we're going to uncover more of this. You have CE, Common Era, because some people don't want to equate anything to do with the date with anything religious if they are not religious. It's interesting the way things have gotten.
Is anybody else cutting audio off? Is anyone else having a problem?
Anybody having a problem with auto?
Unicorn Purple.
Unicorn Purple is having audio problems. Can somebody tell us if you can hear us good? And I'm just going to check to see what we are looking. No, it looks like we're fine here. So
maybe set it here and we'll talk into it better, just in case there's
all good.
All
One
good?
just said
Okay.
yes.
All right. Just cut out for a second. Okay. Good to know. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, because they don't want things coming out this clearly. This is part of what the system is here to keep from happening, is people have a clear understanding of how we got here and why we are here. So let's look again. The terms Anno Domini and before Christ are used when designating years in the Gregorian and Julian calendars. The term Anno Domini is medieval Latin, and it means in the year of the Lord, but is often presented using the Our Lord instead of the Lord, taken from the full original phrase that we just mentioned, which translates to in the year of our Lord Jesus Christ. The form BC is specific to English, and its equivalent abbreviations are used in other languages. Okay. And again, we can use CE. But this whole dating system, again, it's estimated by historians that the true historical Yeshua was born maybe 5 BC, others said 7 BC, 3 BC, generally taken to be a little bit before the BC epoch is to come into being, meaning, we had that off. The dating system was devised in 525 by Dionysius Exiguus and was not widely used until the 9th century. Isn't that curious? Well, again, the entirety of the story of what was to become, the foundation point of the Roman Catholic Church, and thus everything that comes after, today's modern Christianity, was put together beginning at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Again, 300 years later than, the being was historically here, supposedly again. So when we see that we don't know when we are, we can't really even take things literally, which people do. I have seen people say the Bible is 100% perfect. There's no errors. There's hundreds of contradictions and inaccuracies. In fact, any scholar knows this. In fact, most scholars don't take it at face value. When you get to a certain point in understanding how it was all put together, there's no way you possibly could. And yet it does serve a purpose. The purpose is, again, controlling the minds, controlling the belief sets, controlling the expectations of what people believe is expected to happen. So when we talk about things like, if J was not invented till the 1500s, what was it? Was it really Jesus? How about John, Jacob, Jonah, Joseph, Jude? If there was no official J, what were we actually trying to get across? What sound were we trying to express? And how did people literally talk to these people? So, again, it's interesting to look at how things came about. It was common to use the Greek I instead of the Roman J, which ultimately the J, like the first time Jesus was actually written, was, again, the 1500s. I believe it was the Swiss Bible printed for the first time Jesus, the very first time, 1500 years after the fact. Or so they say. Again, the timing is, it's more than debatable. Now, the Greek was spelled with an I, and many of you have probably heard of Jesus or Jesus. And so what was the sound then? Was it more of a sound? Yeah. Again, the language has changed so much that if we were going to talk to somebody that was living in England 500 years ago, we would have a hell of a time trying to communicate to them.
Mm-hmm. We would. And Lee says twisting history hides the future in the folds. Boy, doesn't it, though. I mean, it really muddies the water to such a high degree. And that's why, Mike and I, with the energy work that we do, yes, we learned a lot, we read a lot, we took a lot of classes, but ultimately we are the authority, and it's what we see that works is what we do. So you're absolutely right about that. They have made things a mess on purpose.
The form J was unknown in any alphabet until the 14th century. Either symbol, J or I, used initially generally had the consonant sound of Y, as in year. Gradually, the two symbols were differentiated, the J usually acquiring consonant force and thus becoming regarded as a consonant, and the I becoming a vowel. It wasn't until 1630 that the differentiation became general in England. The original 1611 version of the King James Version of the Bible, there was no J in the Bible because it didn't exist. James was spelled I-A-M-E-S, and Jesus was spelled I-E-S-O-U-S. So isn't that really fascinating? Think about, taking the name of the Lord in vain when you don't even have the name correct. And again, when we look to the dating, what are we really saying with BC and AD? And you're, again, using that term, Lord. Hebrew Adonai is Lord, but we also have it used for words like Elohim, which is plural and means mighty ones or judges. Now we have Herbert Illig and the phantom time hypothesis. So we have Herbert Illig, Heribert Illig, a German historian. He's best known for his radical and controversial theory known as the phantom time hypothesis. Introduced 1991, this theory claims that a significant portion of European history, specifically from the years 614 to 911 AD, is fiction. It's an invention, thus adding about 300 years that never actually existed. According to Illig, these missing centuries were fabricated for a variety of political, religious, astronomical reasons, sparking debates that have continued for decades. While most scholars reject his ideas, of course, again, who funds you? Who gives the scholars their funding? That's the key question. Illig's theory has nevertheless captivated the imagination of many, questioning how history is recorded and interpreted. So he's an independent historian from Germany, trained in the study of medieval history. His work largely focuses on early medieval period, which he believes was misrepresented or distorted. His most notable contribution to historical scholarship is the phantom time hypothesis. This theory, which questions the historical validity of a period between 614 and 911, has made him a controversial figure in the academic world. His hypothesis first gained attention in 1991. When he published his first article on the subject, he argued that the period between 7th and 10th centuries had been fabricated by a combination of powerful political and religious figures. Specifically, he suggested that the reigns of certain monarchs, the spread of Christianity, and even the idea of the Dark Ages were part of a constructed historical narrative. At the core of this theory is the claim that between 614 to 911, that time never happened. According to Illig, historians and religious authorities of the time, particularly the Catholic Church, fabricated these centuries for a variety of reasons. His theory rests on several interconnected arguments, including misalignment of historical records, discrepancies in astronomical data, and the absence of significant material evidence from the period in question. Again, go back to the very fact that it wasn't until our modern times that people entered a church and could go grab a Bible. This is just the reality. In fact, when my mom was little, they didn't even do the service ever in English. So she was listening to Latin the whole time and taking her cues. Stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel, sit, etc. It's, it's Simon Says is what it is.
Well, people go through extremely traumatic things and they're looking for something to make sense of it. They're looking for something to hold on to. And this world, the controllers are very good about having something right there for someone to hold on to if that's what they need, if they go through a trauma. And that's good, if that gets that person through a trauma. But then people start asking even more questions. They have so many questions after they go through some major life trauma. They just want the truth. They just want the truth. And that's where we have to dig.
So, again, his hypothesis draws heavily on the transition from the Julian calendar to Gregorian calendar, which took place in 1582. According to Illig, the Gregorian calendar was not just a correction to fix errors in Julian calendar, rather it was a cover-up for a deliberate manipulation of time. He posits that the Gregorian calendar introduced by Pope Gregory XIII was designed to hide the 300 phantom years. So, there is other evidence too, archaeological evidence. Again, there's a lack of events that some historians will note, because it does seem that in certain time periods farther back, again, there was a lot more info coming out, a lot more major events. Fascinating to delve down that side. Now, I wanted to also give you Anatoly Fomenko. As you can see, he is a scientist. Oh yeah, very, very interesting time. He has put out a lot of information. In fact, Anatoly has written book on top of book on top of book. And, he's very well published. He's the author of 180 scientific publications, 26 monographs and textbooks on mathematics. He's a specialist in geometry and topography, variational calculus, symplectic topography, Hamiltonian geometry and mechanics, computer geometry. Yes, Russian Academy of Science. This is somebody that is very, very well entrenched in academia, but yet has totally blown the lid off of the fact that there's something wrong with our timelines. They do not make sense. This is such a brilliant man to then be labeled a conspiracy theorist. And again, which conspiracies haven't been proven true yet? Because I could think of tons that have been proven true. But I can't think of a single one that's been proven to be just simply a theory. No, not yet. And this is where we're heading. He is, very brilliant. And yet, what was his big takeaway? That, again, it's a global falsification of history in which 1,000 years about have been nothing but lies and fabrications.
Right. And, yes, the idea that CERN has been making its own changes too. So we have many layers of difficulty to wade through just to find the truth, to figure out who we are. And it's those who desire the truth. The truth is very, very important for many who need solid ground to stand on, who have questioned how things are run. We need to know the truth. If you do know that and you know your own heart, then you are better able to navigate this world, even if there are things out there that you don't necessarily agree with. Sometimes we just have to navigate around them. But yeah, CERN has not done us any favors.
No, so I just want to give you some of the basics of what he came up with. He came up with a new chronology. Of course, Wikipedia says it's pseudo-historical. In other words, it's not agreeing totally with the narrative that's been given to us by the control system. So, again, the years, the dates, our timelines are fundamentally flawed in such a way as to show that they have been fabricated and they've been drafted and distorted on purposely on purpose in order to hide the reality of where humanity is, and even what has happened on the planet in the past. The new chronology that Fomenko talks about contains a reconstruction, an alternative chronology, radically shorter than standard historical timeline, because all ancient history is basically folded onto the Middle Ages. According to Fomenko's claims, the written history of humankind, as far as writing only goes back somewhere around AD 800. And again, of course, if we go to Sumerian tablets and stuff, the cuneiform writing is vastly older than that. But again, it's only been translated in modern times. So what he's giving us is really partially to hide the empire of Tartaria and the fact that there was this other, I guess you could say, entity out there that was resisting the spread of the Western world, so to speak. And so much of our history is just a pure fabrication. Well, again, when we have looked and remote viewed, how did they actually put everything together back in the Council of Nicaea, back into, again, 325? There are others, too, that have said that that's really, that was more than just putting together a new religion in an organized, constructed manner. They were also rewriting the history at that point in time. They were controlling the minds. Again, anybody that was, a heretic could be put to death when, this new organized religion of Christianity, which, again, if you look at some of the Gnostic texts, it doesn't seem like it has too much to do with that line of thinking. In fact, again, the Gnostics were wiped out, and the Cathars were wiped out. The Cathars, again, rejected the system that was imposed on everybody, literally, again, at the expense of death. And they tried to live outside the system. But it was the Catholic Church that attacked them and exterminated them in a horrible genocide. This is, again, this is hiding the fact that we have been living in a world that's controlled by an alien force that has taken control of the planet from the indigenous beings, has mingled with the indigenous beings, to the extent where, again, everything is so blurred genetically, we cannot possibly untangle that mix. But we shouldn't even really have to or try to attempt to, because, it's looking at things from a new perspective, looking at things, again, from the mindset that we are all part of this planet. We are cells in the planet. And of course, we should not want to do anything destructive to the planet, because it's destructive to ourselves in a very, very simple and obvious manner.
Mm-hmm. Looking at this world and the 3D world that we live in and trying to make sense of it, it's like, why is it so important that they have to cover things up? And Amanda, yes, just give me the truth, no matter what the cost. Just give it to me, so I know where to place my feet on the ground. I want to know too. And there are so many people who are stuck, and they cling to the lies, but you also have to look at them and understand that there's something about them. They need the information because they're probably in a state of survival. They have not made this world very easy to live in. People are just constantly working to put food on the table, to cover the bills, and they're go, 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 go. So for them to hold on to these lies, it's the thing that keeps them going, so they can feed their children and they can take care of their house. So really all you can have is compassion for them. And hopefully at some point they can open their heart up enough to see while they're in this world, how gifted we truly are. I mean, as human beings, we have so much to give. And that's the big cover up. That's the big lie. It's like how our bodies, minds, emotions are so very powerful, and we don't need anything that they claim that we need to be in this realm.
I will share that, there's some things that hit me sometimes just like a train. And this is Joseph Justice Scaliger. Interesting individual here, as you see him with the pen right there. When you get to the works of Fomenko and Illig, and there's other people associated with this line of thinking, and yes, they don't all agree 100%, but they do agree that what we've been given is a fabrication, it's a construct. This is one of the people that they say is a key person in this construct. So he was born the 5th of August, 1540. Again, I always want to say, which calendar are we going by now? 21st of January in 1609 is when he left the physical body, they say. Franco-Italian Calvinist religious leader and scholar known for expanding the notion of classical history from Greek and ancient Roman history to include Persian, Babylonian, Jewish, ancient Egyptian history. Spent the last 16 years of his life in the Netherlands. So, also associated with the Jesuits, what you see is somebody that, well, let's look at his academic output. It was vast. And he gave us, again, a lot of what becomes our foundational works, or the works that ended up influencing other people in the future that would have a dramatic effect on us. I think when I looked at him and felt into his energy, I had to ask Cindy, just as Flavius Josephus. Now, if 1,000 years really didn't exist, right? If 1,000 years, somewhere around that, anywhere from 300,000 years was really complete fabrication. And so we would then say that maybe he wasn't born in 1540. And one of the pieces that I've failed to mention so far, which I'll mention right now, is that when we look to a lot of tombstones, we'll see an I or a J right here in front of where this one is. And so one of the pieces of evidence that a lot of people will point out is the fact that when you look at tombstones and other designations that are giving us the years in ancient writings here, inscriptions, there's an I or a J where we see now a 1. And what that was denoting is that this was the year of, again, Anno Domini, the year after the birth of Christ, the year after, whether it's Christ or whether they're really referencing Caesar and really referencing the beginning of the Roman Empire, which again morphed into the Holy Roman Empire, into the British Empire, into the American Empire, into what's next. Again, it's the system and how the system has apparently morphed its place of control, its area of operation. When the United States was in 95% of the countries militarily back in 2017, at the beginning of the first eclipse that we had that seemed to change everything. Obviously, the United States is just simply being used as the military-industrial complex's right hand, so to speak. And this is, again, ultimately controlled by the bankers, ultimately controlled by the system that's in place. So when we look to his energy, and if, say, he was born in 540 instead of 1540, and if Josephus was born in 37 AD, died somewhere around 100 AD, again, then they're only maybe 400 years apart, 500 years apart. The point is, the energy is the same. And that's the thing, not that this is the reincarnation of this person, more of that they are performing the same function. These are scholars. These are some of the ones that are giving us our revised history, in my mind. That's what I feel. When you look to all the information about Rome and about, all the biblical stories that we have, he is the source of so much. It's Josephus that has written more than any ancient writer. we have the complete writings of Josephus. It's massive, absolutely massive. He was a Roman citizen. Yeah. He was born Yosef ben Mattiyahu. And historian and military leader. Very, very interesting. But here you have the real truth. This is the real connection. And it reminds me of what we call the Masoretic texts. The term Masoretes refers to a certain group of scribes and scholars who from 6th century to 10th century AD, now did those periods actually exist, dedicated themselves to preserving and standardizing certain scriptures. Yeah. Okay, I think I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'm looking at this and I just wonder, well, how far back do you have to go to find some truth? I guess all you can do is really go back and find a solid piece to stand on and then allow yourself to put things back together from there. But this has been so deeply unraveled and it's so chaotic at this point. How do you really know? But if you're someone who is in a position that they are, I think it's very important, if you're going to set some type of a trend, then you should probably be as honest as you possibly can. But I still believe that they're taking orders.
And I have to just bring up again, I believe that Flavius Josephus is the Apostle Paul. I believe that the writings attributed to the Apostle Paul are his. I'm personally convinced because it feels the same. The energy feels the same. The writing style is the same. And when you think about it, he recorded the Great Revolt, which was AD 66 through 70. He talked about the siege of Masada. He actually wrote Antiquities of the Jews. And then he also became a Roman citizen. So, the word goes that he was there. And he was in the rebellion against Rome that was, again, leading to the siege of Masada and, the horrors after that. But that he was like the only person to survive a particular battle. And then he ended up becoming a Roman citizen. There is so much here. There is so much here. Yes, I think, again, his impact on history. If you took his impact on history away, if you took all his works away, we would have so little out there about the early Roman Empire and the time of Yeshua, Jesus. In fact, we might have a totally different take on the story.
Well, I think we would. So many things could be different, and how many timelines do we really have?
Yeah, again, you can't underestimate his impact. In fact, when you take his work and you take Scaliger's and a few others, it's so much of which everything in the Western world fundamentally is using as a foundation for everything, our history, our religion, the whole history of the Western world, which has gone on to dominate the totality of the world. So was that Western world system, which ultimately goes back to the Romans, which I think ultimately goes back to the Asuras, to use a term, again, that comes out of the Indus Valley and the Vedic scriptures. The Asuras are those demonic entities that come to the planet. How does an Asura act? Well, when they go ahead and they land here, they take over and they set themselves up to be worshipped as king and God all in one. It was also given, when we look to Caesar, what was he? He was denoted a god. What does that really mean? It means that he's one of them. This is really what it denotes. Yes, it's very, very eye-opening. I hope that you guys got something from this. There are others out there that have talked about flamenco and just, followed him, and others that have gone into Illig as well. I wanted to do it from the bigger perspective that we're always trying to get across. How are we at this point in time, in which we have a system that doesn't seem to be anything about helping the average people on the planet. As you know, we have groups like all these organizations. Club of Rome was mentioned again, the few, the UN, all these different charters and stuff. Well, when you look at it from the standpoint that they are not here to look after your well-being, they are here to manage a resource that the real control system has put them in charge of managing.
And, you know, if you're in charge of managing a resource, anything that goes wrong is, you know, it's going to be on you. So they're looking at putting themselves in bad situations if things don't go well.
So things like learning how to read the Akashic records, going within to find the truth, feeling and sensing the truth in things. I really don't think that we could get anything, you know, even remotely like truth out of some of these, you know, entities. I could feel into their energy, and I know you guys can too. And what do I see? Typical politician. Just a typical politician. Could be any politician from any particular party, Democrat, Republican, capitalist, communist, socialist, any country, again, because this whole system is all about controlling our minds. And we're expanding beyond that. They're not going to be able to maintain the ruse. It's falling apart as we speak.
Indeed. And
we love you guys. Thank you so much for sharing these videos. Please do share them. Share them where you can. Keep waking up people. The quicker more people wake up, the quicker the system collapses, and we can construct something much more positive, like this little cutie pie. As always, guys, much love, source bless, and namaste.
Namaste.